welcome to the Chuan podcast. My name is Isaac Kamens. This is a bi-weekly podcast where my friend Jess O'Brien and I discuss internal martial arts, Qigong, and meditation. This week we continue our discussion on the Yang style of Tai Chi. We discuss Wu Hui Chuan, a student of Yang Cheng Fu and the teacher or a teacher of Lin Du Ying, Baiwa's Tai Chi teacher. We discuss Wu's life, short life, and his relationship to Yang Cheng Fu, a little bit about his teaching style, and some words about him from some of his classmates. Then we return to the Tai Chi classics and discuss the concept of listening, or Ting, and how this plays into sensitivity in Tai Chi. So I hope you enjoy the episode. In the extended episode on the Patreon, we go into greater detail about both Wu's life, Wu Hui Chuan's life, and much more into the stuff on the Tai Chi classics. So check that out. We also have a bonus episode that comes out for every regular episode, which if you join the Patreon, you can also get. Okay, thanks for listening. Take care of yourselves. Don't forget to check out the Instagram, and we have a Facebook page and all that. Thanks for listening. Take care of yourselves, and be well.
In today's episode, we're going to continue our discussion of Yang style Tai Chi Chuan. And a master that we wanted to discuss but haven't touched on much yet is Wu Hui Chuan, who lives from 1890 to 1936. So it says here he's born in the 16th year of the Emperor Guangxu's reign in 1890. He was about 6 feet tall, weighing around 170 jin, and he could lift 3 dan of stones with both hands. He practiced various boxing skills and was especially good at wrestling. He learned directly from Yang Cheng Fu. His boxing skills were not actually taught by the older generation, Yang Jianho. He was directly taught by the son, Yang Cheng Fu, and he was Yang Cheng Fu's earliest apprentice. Yang Cheng Fu taught Tai Chi every day, mostly only demonstrating without saying much. Only when the apprentices practice push hands or sticking to the pole that they begin to appreciate Master Yang's posture and strength. Among Yang Cheng Fu's disciples, Wu Hui Chuan was a sturdy figure. He usually had the most opportunities and the longest time with the master to practice push hands, the two-person Sanshou form, sticking swords, and sticking poles together with his teacher. So this is sort of implying that he has the deepest knowledge. Like he got the most time with Master Yang doing swords, doing pole, doing the two-person form, and so on. So going back a bit, it says around the 7th year of the Republic of China in 1918, the grandfather, Yang Jianho, was hired by the Zhejiang army to teach officers and soldiers, but he soon fell ill. And he asked his family to let Tian Zhaolin go on his behalf. Since then, a number of guys, including Wu Hui Chuan of the Yang family, have also been employed as professors of Zhejiang officers and soldiers. So in other words, the grandfather, Yang Jianho, was an instructor in the Zhejiang army, and then he asked his students, among them Tian Zhaolin, Wu Hui Chuan, and another guy, Chu Guiting, that we're going to talk about eventually. All these Yang family guys came and taught the officers and the soldiers. It sounds like they were teaching martial arts.
Right. I mean, yeah. And that could be where Lin Du Ying trained with them for.
He may have been one of those soldiers. That's what I was thinking, right? Maybe, or because it's clearly Lin Du Ying in the Shanghai underworld, and from what the reading I've done, there's a lot of, as we've mentioned before, during those wartime years, there's so much in the warlord period. There's a lot of corruption and a lot of just influence, and rebels and government are cheating the system. Both of them are cheating the system. So it says here that in 1928, Yang Cheng Fu was hired to go south. And Wu Hui Chuan and Dong Yingjie accompanied Yang Cheng Fu's disciples on the trip. Wu Hui Chuan and his fellow disciple Chu Guiting started the establishment of the Chinese Wudong Taiji Chuan Research Society in Shanghai, with Yang Cheng Fu as the nominal president, while Chu Guiting and Wu Hui Chuan were actually responsible for the daily teaching affairs. So Wu Hui Chuan has a high spirit and advertised the boxing club as the first disciple of the Yang family, Wu Hui Chuan Taiji Chuan Club. Because of his sturdy body, profound skills, and superb skills, he can use both push hands and shansho freely, according to his heart's desire. And he is good at developing 1-inch strength, penetrating into the interior. And he's also brave. He specialized in being soft and elastic, and is worthy of being a disciple of the Yang family. Next, this article talks about a witness to Miss Wu Huaichuan having a push hands performance against another guy named Wu Yunzhou. So, Wu Huaichuan is over 200 pounds, but the other Wu is a head taller than him. So, it's a question of who's, maybe one guy's more flexible, the other guy's more heavy. And once they began to touch, the two have 4 legs. So it's like their bodies are joined. So now it's like they're on a platform and the two have 4 legs. They're like butterflies amongst the flowers, the wind galloping, the water flowing, the clouds moving. And so it sounds like they're balanced. Their feet are on a wooden board and making no sound at all. They're motionless as a breeze. But then the taller Wu was at a loss. Every time he shot out and tried to attack, the wooden board banged and slammed as it was about to collapse and be destroyed. And meanwhile, Master Wu, it is said that his body was like that of a diamond, and in pushing hands, an electric current flows through into the other opponent's body, touches them, and immediately they fall. So it sounds like he was just rocking this dude. Now, the next part of the article says that Wu Haichuan's Taiji Chuan skills are profound and pure, and his reputation in Shanghai is getting bigger and bigger. At that time, the Shanghai martial arts circles unanimously recognized Yang-style Taiji Chuan Kung Fu. The number 1 was Mr. Yang Cheng Fu, but Mr. Wu Huaichuan was next. So by 1935, about 1,000 people participated in Wu Huaichuan's Taiji Chuan Club. So in the 30s, this is really taking off. And they must be making a big impact. Yang Cheng Fu is kind of at the peak of his powers. It's at the end of his life, though.
Right. This is probably the peak of Tai Chi Chuan's popularity.
Pretty much, right? This is when T.T. Liang is there too, in the Shanghai underworld, where he's a government official taking tons of bribes. So he's like partying hard with these guys. And maybe that's how he got into training, because I think he started with Yang Cheng Fu, and then Yang Cheng Fu died, so he switched to Teng Man Cheng. Anyways, yeah, the early 1930s, this is when Tai Chi's at its peak, pretty much. Just total insanity. And the whole world's on fire at that point. The Japanese invasion's taking place. Like, China's just being rocked once again.
Well, and it sounds like Wu Haichuan is getting kind of, he's the guy,
yeah,
he's the man.
There's the old master, but you can see that Wu Haichuan's the dude.
He's the up and coming kind of like,
right. He's next. He's going to be the next superstar. Exactly. So legend has it that one of the 3 great masters of Shanghai, a different guy called Zhang Shaolin, it sounds like he's a high-level martial arts gangster guy. He hired Wu Huaichuan as a martial arts teacher and gave him a chartered car and a special card that said he could enter and leave any brothel under Zhang's jurisdiction for free. Damn, so he's got a car to drive him around, and it's like he's got any brothel he wants to hit. So Wu Huaichuan's kicking ass. However, and then the next thing says that Wu Huaichuan failed to invest in stocks, and so at half-life his savings were wasted. So I guess he wasn't very good with money.
Sounds like he was blowing his cash.
It sounds
like partying and
I mean, it sounds like he could enter or leave the brothel, but maybe inside he was spending his money, getting extra drinks and such.
Come in for free, but it costs money to leave.
There's always a VIP section. Come on, no matter how free it is, you can always find a way. And so another thing it says here, Wu Huaichuan was very excitable when he practiced push hands, and he accidentally bounced a capitalist into the air, causing him to hit a wall and suffer serious injuries. And then a car rammed into Wu Huaichuan on purpose, causing Wu Huaichuan to suffer internal injuries. And then the article says they don't know if any of this is necessarily true. But but it does seem to say that Wu Huai Chen died in 1936, the winter of the year his teacher Yang Chengfu died.
Hmm.
That's a disaster because like
So he died young, yeah.
way too young, right? I mean, if he's born 1890, that's only he's not even 50 years old. So that's a great shame. So somewhere in there, Lin Du Ying must have learned from him in the 1930s during that heyday as one of the students at one of these schools. Maybe he was, who knows which one, and then goes on to teach Baihua maybe in the 1960s, 30 years later.
Yeah, and I mean, he may have had other teachers that we don't
Right.
that aren't listed.
I mean, if he learned from Chen Zhaolin and this guy, he must have learned from other Yang style just bigwigs.
I think Chan Lin lives to the 1960s.
He lives longer, yeah. Even though I think he's older than Wu. No, they're born the same year. Wu Huai Chen is born 1 year before him. So
Okay.
Chen Zhaolin's from 1891. So they're both looks like around the same. He could have, he survived though, and Wu didn't. So that's one of those twists of fate, I suppose. And so here's a statement from the funeral. It says, Chen Wei-ming said about Master Wu, elder brother's body is like King Kong. None of us could catch up with him. But he died so early, which is an irreparable loss in the martial arts world. This can only be said to be a matter of life and death.
So that's his younger class.
Yeah, Chen Wei-ming's his younger classmates. Like none of us would catch up to this guy, but he's the one who got killed.
Is the Hendrix.
He's the Hendrix, yeah. He's the Janis Joplin. So here's another little article here, another little statement inside the article. There's this guy, Lee is speaking, talking about Zheng Manqing, another student of Yang Chengfu who ran with these guys. He says this Zheng Manqing is quite smart and knows the real taste of Taiji Chuan, but only Wu Huai Chuan is really good. His kung fu is also very comprehensive, with the knives, spears, and swordsmanship are all good. But it's a pity that opium smoke killed him.
Oh, so this guy's saying that he
yeah, interesting.
Maybe that's why the car hit him.
Okay, so they're speculating. Did he die from a car accident? Did he die from opium smoke? And now it says, did he die from injection of opium poisoning? So the article finally ends like this. Whether it was arrogance, excessive grievances, lost savings due to investment failures, or careless friends, or going in and out of brothels, drinking and eating, or was it opium poisoning? Wu Huai Chen, the first disciple of the Yang family who lives in the world with his true skills, was a pure Tai Chi martial artist in the years before he hastily came down in the world. So yeah, it sounds like he lived a hell of a life.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like this guy was no saint, that's for sure.
Right? I mean,
he was living
Did he die from going in and out of brothels or drinking and eating too much? I mean, I think maybe Yang Chengfu was probably living it up too, because he's super obese and looks like he's a baller, right? He's got like a nice car and he's rolling in dough.
Yeah.
So 1930s Shanghai, there were no rules, right?
It was a wild time for sure. So
and that's where this Tai Chi style comes out of, basically. Now returning to the 13 songs of Taiji Chuan classics. We've been going through these one by one, and so last time we were talking about the waist and the abdomen. This time, the quotation's about the spine. It says, when the spine is erected naturally, the whole body will move smoothly and lightly. With the head erect and lifted, the spirit will reach the top of the head and will be quiet and clear. So Baihoff offers some explication beneath. It says, the spine is erected naturally does not mean that the tailbone stays passive, but it must cooperate with the sacrum by continuous internal connection. It must confirm with the Zongding, central channel. In fact, it's not just that the tailbone must stay connected, but the entire spine must conform to Zongding. Only in this way can the spirit permeate into the head and the qi penetrate the four limbs. It will be balanced by gravity as the root of lightness. Achieving the head erected will lift the spirit and be quiet and clear. So this is a Tai Chi, slogan that you hear all the time. So the lifting of the head in Chinese martial arts, all Chinese martial arts that I've ever encountered have this lifting. Take the very tip top of the head and lift it slightly to straighten, make the spine, unkink the spine and get it nice and straight and smooth.
Yeah, this is the Zhongding, right? This is the how do you create the central equilibrium, right? Well, the first thing you've got to do is you've got to straighten the body, the spine, so that there's a straight path for the energy to get through, right? So the idea being that without this thing being lined up properly, that energy that's coming through your legs and up through your body isn't going to make it to your head. It's going to get stuck, wherever your body's collapsed or protruding or blocked in some way. It's going to diminish at each one of these blockages and then, maybe not even get there at all. So the first step to making everything move smoothly and lightly and getting this energy to get through your entire body is to essentially, take a little bit of the weight off of yourself by lifting your head up, right?
And then your organs and your ribs and your hips feel a little less burdened, kind of.
Yeah, it's sort of it's the counter force to gravity, right?
Basically, yeah.
Even if you're standing up, gravity will start to kind of squish you a little bit, right?
Cool. So you keep a continuous lifting to counteract that.
And so this is like the difference between a young person and an old person, essentially, is how much, when that spine starts to collapse, right? So you can be 20 years old, and if your spine is super collapsed, you're going to move like an 80-year-old.
Sure.
Move like an old person, right? You can be 80, and if your spine is springy and light and open, you're going to still have some pep in your step, right?
Yeah. Another thing I think it's interesting here is, he's talking about the head being erect, so the skull and the top of the body, but then he makes a point about the sacrum and the tailbone also being connected. So you don't neglect those parts either. You've got a sort of a link between the bottom of the tailbone through the sacrum, up the spine to the top of the head.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea being that, in order to get that thing to lift, it's got to have an anchor, right? The sacrum is that's the other end of the snake, right? And you have to kind of get both ends of the thing to connect.
And then the chi penetrates the four limbs. So like once the inside is nice and loose and open, now the energy and the nerve flow and the blood flow can get out to the limbs much better.
Yeah, you don't have to do anything for it to get there. It's already going to, in a sense, going to flow smoothly. And so it makes your job a lot easier.
I like this slogan, gravity is at the root of lightness, which may be not a great translation, but it gets across like from nothing comes something. So you need to go down in order to create up, like through that gravity, your resistance to gravity creates a lightness inside you, kind of.
The way Bruce says that is the down causes the up.
Right?
That the sinking is what causes the lifting, right? So you want to do pong, you sink down, right? Like this idea, everything starts essentially by bringing that sense of gravity into your body and down.
So Louis Swaim translates this as the coccyx is centrally aligned, and the spirit, Shen, threads to the crown of the head. The whole body is light and nimble when the head is suspended at the crown. So the by way point.
Yeah, I mean,
the top of the head, the crown.
The specific points, right?
Yeah, the Wei Lu, that's the coccyx down at the bottom, and then the Shen rises all the way up to the byway point. And then the body's light and nimble. This one's pretty straightforward. I think anybody who's done Tai Chi at all is definitely hears this on your first day, practically.
It is one of the more common ones for sure.
So Barbara Davis goes a little bit into the specific words. So she talks about Wei Lu. She said this refers to the sacral region is as being zong zang or straight, as a compound of zhong centered and jang square or upright. So that's the same as zhong ding is this zhong jang talking about the tailbone. Then the whole body's light and free moving. Qing means light in weight or movable. Li has such meanings as profitable, useful, keen, encounters no difficulties, and easy. So that's the description of what your body's like. Profitable, useful, keen, encounters no difficulties, easy. So that's an interesting look at the actual words.
I think, they're all kind of saying essentially the same thing, that there's something that you're trying to get to the top of your head, right? Whether that's your intent or your chi or your spirit or whatever you want to call it, but the instruction is keep your head up, basically,
and your tailbone drop, more
and
or
your
less.
tailbone dropped, and the reason, the why, is essentially that it creates that sensual
light and free moving.
Yeah.
Oh, and here she says the chi is soaring, spirit connecting, and the body light. All of these statements have the flavor of Taoist internal cultivation methods.
Right. I mean,
so these are quotations from Taoist methods that are being applied here.
It's throwing back to the Tao Te Ching and things like that.
And Neidan, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, now here comes T.T. Leon. I got to check this one. When the lowest vertebrae are plumb erect, the spirit of vitality reaches the top of the head. When the top of the head is held as if suspended from above, the whole body feels light and agile.
Right. Well, I mean, if you think about training with Bruce, doesn't matter what you're doing.
Yeah.
The first thing he says is drop your tailbone. The second thing he says is lift the top of your head.
Yep, there you go.
I mean, so
that's the standing alignment, right?
Right. Yeah. Essentially, it's feel that area in your lower back open up and
Totally.
let your sacrum release down your legs, but keep that lifting in your head so that your body doesn't slump when you do it. And it's
TT makes a few connections.
Much easier said than done, but
right. No, that's why everyone says it. Yeah. So he says when the lowest vertebrae are erect, forming a straight line with the occiput, the spirit of vitality will rise to the top of the head and the mind will be clear and alert. When the head is upright and the top of the head held erect, the whole body will maintain a perfect balance and feel light and nimble. So he says, when a man stands, the top of his head points to heaven, and his feet join the earth, forming a perpendicular line. His mind is clear and alert. Whereas other animals like a lion, tiger, ox, or horse are different. When they stand, their heads and spines are in a horizontal line. Their bodies are strong, but their minds are dull and stupid. That is why human beings are the cleverest creatures in the world. Our heads line up with heaven. Right. So, I mean yeah, it might be right.
It's the argument for, we got smarter when we started walking upright.
I mean, that's as good a reason as any I've heard.
I mean, I'll take it. Like I said,
So the next line reads like this. Carefully study and analyze the above mentioned rules. Using flexion and extension, opening and closing, you can achieve the comprehending force, or Jin. So Jin, being the use of internal energy to exert force on others, is being the most, one of Tai Chi's most important things. So Bai Hua explains it like this: stillness is closing, motion is opening. Mindfulness of the Zongding is closing, and seeking, whereas you take the flexion and extension of someone else as yours to gain an advantage, is opening. So he's comparing closing and opening as, as sort of closing in on yourself or taking motion.
Yeah, just explaining what those mean. I mean, so let's take it. I mean, if you back up a little bit,
yeah,
the carefully study and analyze part, right?
Okay,
that has to do with how does she put it? It's heart mind, right? So the carefully study and analyze is like,
a non-intellectual analysis in this case.
Well, it's both, I think, is the thing, right? It's carefully study. That's, you know, carefully like think about everything you do.
Absorb it, like
But
take
then
it on.
also, as you're doing it, analyzing what you're doing, quote unquote, meaning that you're adding these elements of bending and stretching, opening and closing, and all the other um, I think jings essentially. But that awareness intent part of it is the heart mind has to be the thing that's doing it's not your conscious mind, right? So there's this get out of your head thing implied there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely been implied for sure.
And I think flexion, extension, opening, closing is just shorthand for the type of movement that you're doing, pumping essentially.
Pumping the bellows, so to speak.
Yeah. And then, if you can achieve that, you can grasp these higher levels of.
Right. So just sort of examples of closing, opening and closing, stillness and motion. And so it says the concept of Tai Chi Chuan fundamentally negates the limitations of established movements. The so-called 13 postures are to empty oneself and follow others, to take the enemy's actions as your own as the enemy changes. The concept of Tai Chi is that movement and stillness are mutually concentrated. Yin and Yang are in the same body.
Well, that's the understanding of the Jing is that.
Yeah, it's like there has to be some body level understanding. Like you have to empty yourself completely and then just fully do this spontaneously. It can't be planned. It has to come from the sheen. So when you apply Tai Chi action, it has to come from this unconscious place rather than from a calculating, I block him, and then he blocks me, then I cover and chop or whatever. There's got to be something deeper going on, is my impression.
Well, yeah, I mean, essentially the idea is that when you relax and you can find this place where you're using these Tai Chi principles, you don't need to have, as he puts it, your own determined movements. You don't need to have like a predetermined, if they do this, then I do that, right?
Yeah.
You're able to adapt and respond to changes in a way that's free, right? You're not stuck. If they do something you're not prepared for, you don't freeze up.
Right. When the plan goes to shit, you're able to keep going.
Right. You're able to adapt essentially. So this is the Ben Hua thing comes into it.
Yeah.
The
sort of seamless change or effortless shifting
right. So
of one thing to the other.
This thing is the idea to allow, in a sense, to hear, right? So it's like
to allow the opponent to
listen to what the opponent is
doing, what they want to do and go with it somehow.
But you also need to have, in the previous one, right, the lifting of the head, the zhong ding, there's the ding, right? But that's the ding, not ting. So that's a very confusing thing, because in a lot of these concepts, you could be talking about the straightness of the body and the listening ability of the body as being essentially the same thing, right? Because you need one to have the other, but they're two completely different things. So your comprehending force is your listening abilities, if you will, right? Your listening energies.
The very last thing he says, rather than use one's predetermined moves, it's much easier and free to respond to changes in the opponent's moves.
Right.
So again, you're using that shin, that deeper internal awareness to kind of respond, spontaneously rather than predetermined action.
Yeah, this is that idea. If you can listen carefully enough to what they're doing, you can, to keep the analogy going, hear it coming, right? That there's a little bit of something that comes out of their intent. This is telegraphing. I mean, is really one way to think about it, right? That their mind is making the intent to punch you in the face, and rather than having to wait until they make the fist and throw it at your face, you're able to, again, keeping the analogy, hear what's happening inside of them and respond to it before it's too late.
That's the kicker.
Yeah.
All right. Good working with you, man.
All right, brother.
See you soon.
Hey, folks, thanks for listening. Just a quick reminder, check out the Patreon, check out the Instagram, the Facebook, all that. Take care of yourselves, and thanks for listening.